Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of Madaba Mondays. I'm your host, Paul Fischer, with the Cultural Antiquities Task Force at the U.S. Department of State. In each episode, we'll explore some element of the One Place, Many Stories 3D model, audio tour, and storytelling project that you can explore for yourself now. A link to the project is in the description of this video. In this episode, we'll dive deeper into the 3 sites in Madaba, Jordan that the virtual tours explore: St. George's Church, the Burnt Palace, and the Archaeological Park East, including Hippolytus Hall and the Church of the Virgin Mary. Of those sites, St. George's Church is remarkable for the ancient Mosaic Map of the Holy Land. And now I'm going to share my screen so we can learn a bit more about that map. Here it is depicted as you would see it on the church floor. And from the key, we can see how the map could function as a guide for pilgrims to the Holy Land. The Mosaic Map was created between 542 and 562 AD and is 15.75 meters by 5.6 meters in size, containing over 150 sites of biblical significance. On this slide, we can see a few of those sites compared side by side with the Madaba Mosaic Map, reoriented north to south. Our early map makers did pretty well. So we'll explore more of this map in our conversation with our guides. At the end of episode 1, I asked the panelists to tell us what cultural heritage means to them and what they see as their role in protecting and preserving cultural heritage. Kacey Hadick from CyArk said that his appreciation of the definition grew from built heritage, like the Church of St. George featured in the guided tour, to include intangible heritage. In episode 2, Sam Twal, one of those tour guides, described some of the things visitors to Madaba might experience. In the virtual tour, Sam leads visitors through the Burnt Palace. However, Sam also described things that you can only experience by going to Madaba, including visiting the Peace Yard behind the Church of St. George and the interfaith dialogue between Christians and Muslims in Madaba, such as Christians fasting during Ramadan and Muslims celebrating Christmas. Sam is with us again today, as well as 2 other tour guides, Fuad Hamarneh, who leads the tour of the Church of St. George, and Saber Twal, who leads the tour of the Church of the Virgin Mary and Hippolytus Hall. In the last episode, I asked the panelists, who had all participated in the photogrammetry documentation of the site, to reflect on what they saw as their role in protecting and preserving cultural heritage. We built upon this idea of community archaeology. Community archaeology is a network of trust and stewardship between classically trained archaeologists like Drs. Doug Clark and Suzanne Richard, tour guides like Sam, Fuad, and Saber, students like Jude Twal, concerned citizens like Haliborim, and businesses, including restaurants, hotels, and carpet and mosaic sellers. Now let's get started and speak with a few others who are a part of Madaba's Community Archaeology Network, protecting our shared inheritance of Madaba's rich cultural heritage. So I'd like Kacey to turn on your camera and unmute your microphone. Hey, Kacey.
Hey, Paul. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Welcome back. And so for those who weren't able to participate in episode 1, could you reintroduce yourself and CyArk?
Sure. So my name is Kacey Hadick, and I'm the Director of Conservation Programs at CyArk. And CyArk is a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in the San Francisco Bay Area. But we work globally to share the way that 3D documentation can transform the way we protect, share, and explore cultural heritage sites. One of the ways that we do that is using 3D documentation of cultural heritage sites to create virtual experience, like the one that we created in collaboration with our partners in Madaba, to share Madaba's cultural heritage sites on the web.
Okay, and so then my understanding is that this project was unique in several ways from how CyArk has done virtual tours and documentation in the past. So before this project, what sort of context would CyArk typically provide to a virtual experience?
Yeah, so CyArk has been around since 2003, and most of our work in the past kind of happened with archaeologists or architects that were working to protect these places. And often on our projects, we would go there in person and we'd collect audio and video supplemental materials to support telling the story with the 3D content. And this project was unique because one, we were able to complete all of the work virtually. Like we've talked about previously, all of the training for the 3D documentation occurred online with the American University of Madaba. But on this project, we also had the opportunity to interview our tour guides, which we'll hear from a little bit later. And this is really exciting for us because they have years of experience giving tours in person. And I think it's really exciting that in a virtual space, we can also take their expertise and knowledge and share that with a wider audience. And I think that's something so exciting about this experience.
Yeah, the experience is really exciting. I think people have really been enjoying visiting the virtual tour and exploring Madaba such as they can during the pandemic. So let's dive in a bit deeper. Tell us a bit more about how this particular project in Madaba was different from past projects.
Yeah, I think since the start of the pandemic, we've been looking at ways that we can support cultural heritage sites that may have seen a reduction in visitors. And so this kind of project kind of exemplified on like what can be done remotely and how we can provide virtual access to places using 3D data collected. Maybe it was collected previously or collected like as in this project right now during this time. And so this project was one of the first that CyArk completed entirely remotely through online training and as well as collecting all of that supplemental audio and video to kind of implement within the 3D experience. And we're really thrilled with the results from this project. And it highlights how with remote instruction and Zoom interviews, we can kind of create this experience that features so many different community members. And I think something that's different in our projects where we go in person, maybe we're limited, we're only there for just a few weeks. And so I think with this project, we could, things didn't have to happen all at once. We could work with community members one week and then the week after we could interview tour guides. And I think this experience with so many different narrators and voices, you really start to understand like all the different ways that Madaba's cultural heritage, what it means to different people and different communities and why it's so important that we protect it.
That idea of multiple narratives existing in the same place, it's so intuitive, but I think it's really easy to lose sight of as maybe like a foreigner visiting Madaba for the first time that, not everybody in Madaba has a homogenous view of what Madaba means to them. And so like that nuance that's been captured in the model from the tour guides and from the storytellers is really impactful, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think like, I don't know, as a Westerner visiting a place, you see, oh, maybe it's a really beautiful place, but you don't know all of the personal stories that are part of those places. And I think being able on this project, being able to work with so many different people and hearing the stories from maybe 20 years ago when they were younger or even today, it's pretty exciting to see all of these different, what these places mean to different people.
Yeah. And so now developing the tour specifically, and I sort of want to build towards the conversation with Sam, Fuad, and Saber. How did that look as compared specifically for the tour guides compared to past CyArk endeavors?
Yeah, I think something I'm sure Fuad and Saber and Sam can talk about is it's a lot different than giving a tour in person. You don't have the site in front of you and the questions are maybe not coming from the audience looking at something that they're seeing on the site. And so I think there was some working to try and get something that was still impactful and shared the story of each of these three places that we've highlighted in the experience in kind of a summary 10 to 15 minute kind of tour through each of these places that would maybe cover some of the main questions that people have in these places. But again, because we didn't have unlimited time, and we selected 10 or 15 points in each of those locations. And so I think maybe Fuad and Saber and Sam can talk about like that kind of challenge of narrowing down so much history that each of these three places have into these kind of short format web experience these kind of limits that we put on them. So I think that might have been a little bit challenging.
Yeah, when you're taking a tour in person and you can say, hey, what about this thing? What about this small detail in the background? That's an entirely different experience when you can sort of, engage and interact with the tour guide sort of on the fly. But, we did the best that we could under the circumstance. And so were you the one or who was working from CyArk day to day or sort of prepping Fuad, Saber, and Sam?
Yeah, it was myself and a few other colleagues that were working with the tour guides. And so I think something that's so exciting is you got to hear their personal stories too, and not just telling Fuad, he can share a little bit. He got married in the Church of St. George. And so I think that was something that we were able to pull out in each of the stories. And I think it made for a much richer and more interesting experience for the audience, the web audience. So yeah, very exciting.
I certainly hope people agree that this is an incredible experience. All right, thank you, Kacey. So if you can mute your microphone and turn off your camera, and Sam, Fuad, and Saber, if you're able to turn on your cameras and unmute your microphones.
Hi.
Hey, welcome, Sam. Welcome, Fuad. Welcome, Saber.
Hi, everyone.
Let's see, Saber, I didn't actually hear you. I want to make sure your microphone's working.
Oh, hello.
Okay, great. Well, welcome. So first of all, I'd just like each of you to introduce yourself and the site that you narrate in the project.
Okay.
Sam, if you want to kick us off, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, hi. First of all, I'm very, very happy actually to be part of this group and part of this team and to do the virtual tours. Actually, when I started my life, I worked with the American Center for Ant Research when I done the project here, okay, back in the 1992 until 1995, when I started to be guiding, okay, and I was also with the Society for Preserving the Heritage, and this is how I was very interested in doing the job and doing the work as a guide, okay. Well,
and sorry, Sam, before we move on to Fuad, what about the Burnt Palace? Maybe if you could just say a few words about the Burnt Palace.
Yes, actually, the Burnt Palace, first of all, when they discovered, they thought that this is a part of the church back in the 80s. And the United States, okay, which is back in 1992, after the sanctions, okay, of the Iraqi wars and that's what's happened, they decided USA to come and to help us and to teach us how to catch the fish, okay, and to support us to catch the fish and to prove our sites, to improve the time of spending inside Madaba by the tourist. Before, the tourist only is spending 5 minutes. So they done the idea of the archaeological park, okay? So before, we never expected to find anything, okay? They discovered the hole, the Cardo, the Martyr Church, okay, the entrance. Before, they thought that the archaeological departments of Jordan, it's better to move on the mosaics, okay, and to send it to Amman and put it in the museum. So the American, they said, okay, 1 second. When the USA came, they came and actually they done the archaeological part. First of all, they done my colleague, okay, Saber, he will explain about the first part of the archaeological part, and we managed to the government, they managed to buy the clinic and to buy the houses and to open up and do the excavations. And amazing, we find a very beautiful piece of mosaics. We find the Burnt Palace. They call the Burnt Palace because they found like 30 centimeters, 1 foot of scratches on the top of the mosaics, which is why they call it the Burnt Palace, which is a palace. It's not the church. It is or a hall or a governor area. It's palace because we find the kitchen in it. We find the toilet. We find the stuff which has belonged to the feminine area. Okay, this is why we call it the palace. Unfortunately, there's a very big part of the palace are destroyed because of the constructions which is happening at the clinic, which is right now the Minister of Tourism office, okay? And also we managed to buy some of the houses, and we find the entrance of the church of the Martyr Church, which is really very beautiful. And also some of the old houses of the Christian Jordanian, when we banded from Karak and came to live here inside Madaba, we recycled the houses and we built in the top of the site.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, from the tour, the mosaics that are there that you describe are really incredible, and I'm really looking forward to asking you a bit more about that in a second.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
First, I want to go back to Fuad, though. And Fuad, if you can introduce yourself and the Church of St. George.
Yes. My name is Fuad Hamarneh. I'm a general tour guide. So, no electricity? Where are you?
No, it's my office. The lights turned off. Okay.
Okay.
I thought I'd fix that problem because we had the same problem in the last episode. Apparently,
Okay.
Sorry, Fuad. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No. It's okay. So my name is Fuad Hamarneh. I'm a general tour guide in the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. I have been around tourism since the day I was born, because I was born in Madaba, living in Madaba my whole life. Started my professional career in 2019 in tourism. Before that, I was working around people in a sales and marketing profession. As for St. George Church, it is literally by the name of the people who's living around it. It's the church of my family church. It's the church that I've been living beside my whole life. It's the church that is there, in the neighborhood. So it's our playground. I think it's the same for even Saber and Osama. I mean, it's not a church. It's where we play football. It's where we used to do some of the camps for the scouts, etc., etc. So it is a church that is considered a family church, because I'm an Orthodox. That's why I was with it in the church. We had a small problem at the beginning of my wedding, and I was even going to make my wedding in the Catholic Church. So in Madaba, we do have this kind of. Anyways, so it is my family church. I've been there. I know every small detail of the church, of the St. George Church, and the other churches. We all living in Madaba, and every bit and small stone in Madaba, just we belong to it in a way or another.
Fuad, thank you for sharing that, because I think that's something that has really come across. Well, it comes across in the virtual tour, but also in these conversations that we've been having, just how much of this, what we might see from the outside is old heritage, this old church or these old ruins, but it's very much a part of, your everyday life. It's so interesting. You play football there, the scouts are there, you got married there. It's still very much a vibrant part of the community and how the community interacts with it.
Yes, this is true. And even if you heard the brief, our ancestors, they are the people who have built the church with the help of the fathers, definitely, and with the funding that has been there through maybe the governments, maybe through the church. We're not really sure, because it was not really documented. But we know for sure that all the people that have immigrated, as Osama just mentioned before, Sam just said, the immigrants from Karak to Madaba, all the immigrants have made the role in a way or another by building this church. So yes.
Thank you. Okay, so stay on the line. And Saber, if you can introduce yourself and Hippolytus Hall and the Church of the Virgin Mary.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Saber. I'm also a general tour guide here in Jordan.
Saber, sorry, can you just speak up a little bit? It's a little hard to hear you.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying not to scream into the mic. I guess my voice is too low. So, as I said, I'm a general tour guide here in Jordan. I'm a Madaba local. I grew up in Madaba, and just as my colleague Fuad said, we Madaba is a very small community where everybody knows each other, and just because the big bulk of archaeological sites were discovered in the 80s and the 90s while people were remodeling their homes, because they have been there for 100 years. They immigrated from Kark in the early 1880s. So they've been there for 100 years almost. So they started remodeling their houses, and that's when the big bulk of archaeological sites were discovered. And us as kids, we didn't know what they meant, to be honest. We had absolutely zero awareness of what they meant or what they represented. As kids, we were just, walking through the sites because they were provided the most convenient shortcuts to wherever we wanted to get to. So we were just, going through the sites, not knowing what they are. And but it's a lot better now where people are more aware about the importance of those sites. For me, I was very fortunate to lead the tour of the Archaeological Park West, which hosts the Hippolytus Hall and the Church of the Virgin Mary. To the naked eye, these two places look like one place, but they're actually discovered at two different stages. The Hippolytus Hall was discovered by a Madaba local in 1905, and the Church of the Virgin Mary was discovered by Father Michel Picarello in 1982 while excavating that part of the hall. Of course, the archaeological part was one big Byzantine palace that is now divided by a modern street, but it used to be just one big palace that dates back to the 6th century. And the Hippolytus Hall is everything has to do with the Greek mythology and the Greek myths, and it tells the story of the myth of Hippolytus and Phaedra. And the Church of the Virgin Mary just gives you a typical 6th, 7th century style church that was built at that time, which is named a Basilica style church, as well as the fact that it was built on top of a Roman temple, because at the time it was just convenient for Christians to reuse what they had at the time, the columns and the stones, whatever they could. Instead of rebuilding everything from scratch, they just reused whatever they could find to build their churches. And that goes for previous civilizations as well. When the Romans took over, they used the Greek columns. They just tweaked them a little bit. They put the acanthus flower on the capital to make it look Roman, but the columns are in fact Greek, originally Greek. But to add Roman character to the capital of the column, they added the acanthus leaf. So it is it makes a lot of sense that the Christians reused the Roman temples to rebuild their churches.
As I'm thinking about that and thinking about that in the context of what Fuad just said about the living heritage, about people still interacting with the Church of St. George, it's funny, you sort of see that same phenomenon throughout history. The Romans iterating on Greek temples, the Christians iterating and adapting on Roman temples, and now the current people of Madaba, you described as a kid, running through the archaeological sites or turning those old sites into homes. It's very interesting, and I want to keep exploring this idea. And as I'm asking you guys questions, I want all of you to feel like you can, add something. If I ask a question of Sam, Fuad, and Saber, you should feel free to jump in, and same throughout as I move on to Fuad and Saber. Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
The idea which has happened is actually that my city, Madaba, is, Jordan as a country, to have a city, to have a country, to have anything, you have to have three elements: water, business, and protection. If something missing of those three, you cannot have a city. What's happened is actually that during the Umayyad period, Umayyad made it very, very interesting. Jordan, they were interested in it because it is between their civilizations and the power, okay? The civilization, which is in Damascus, okay, and the power of them, which has happened between the tribes, which is they are controlling and living here in this area, and still until now they are. But the Abbasis, okay, which is they took over in 750, they didn't like anything. They didn't like the Bedouins. They didn't like they didn't like us. Let's say they didn't like us. So they shift with the road they call the Silk Road. So the business is becoming with the Silk Road. So Jordan physically, okay, died. No history, nothing. Okay, after the 750 AD. So what's happened when the Christians they came to this area to Madaba in 1881, which is, you know, you cannot die out from zero. There's some inhabitants like Bedouins, tribes, people living in the small villages, okay, but not major thing, okay, living there and there. But in the 1881, when the tribes they came to Madaba and started to want to have bandit from Karak because one of our ladies married and not from the same religion. This is which is like a very big curse for our Twal family. So we left Karakin, we came and we settled here. We find the land is empty. So we came and recycled the old stones and we built in the top of each other's. So this is why Saber, what he said, the Fuad said that this is very important element for us, the church, because the church give us the power to claim the land and we got it from the Turks. This is the idea of the church. And this is why wherever we do any maintenance, any excavations in our houses, we find an ancient site. Until now, if you want to build, okay, your house in the center of the city, you have to have a permission of the Department of Antiquities, and there should be somebody, okay, which is watch you and to take care, okay, because you might destroy something, okay. Before the government they take the house. Right now the government, okay, they take the ancient site. So we have another site, okay, which is undeveloped yet, okay, which is still where the wall of the Acropolis, which is from the Neolithic period, from the 9th century BC.
You know, what you were saying about sort of these critical features of what is needed for the survival of a city, you know, that's just sort of, I think, to get your city started, that business protection and water, as well as, you know, food. But, you know, I think what we're seeing in these conversations is just how much we need each other. And I mean, this has only become more salient for me during the pandemic. You need a sense of community. You know, you need people to talk to. You need sort of this shared heritage and shared inheritance of cultural heritage.
Indeed.
So Sam, I want to ask you, and let's dive a bit deeper now into the Burnt Palace. So
Yes.
why is the Burnt Palace called the Burnt Palace? And I mean, you were sort of alluding to this a little bit. Go ahead.
Okay. See, when they discovered the place, they thought Father Michele Picarello that it's a part of the church because of the direction. Later on, in 1992, 1994, Dr. Ghazi Biche and the USAID, okay, Churlinson, which is I worked with that site, okay. We done the excavations and we find the shape of the palace look like C, in alphabet C in English, okay. So we found, okay, the mosaics, which is they found it's a part of the church. There's like the entrance of it is a feminine, there's a feminine shoes, which is, and feminine pictures plus the hunting, which is a reminder, sorry, maybe, it's a reminder that the ladies, which is they are there, that the man is doing the hunting. And actually, beside the only entrance, there's a kitchen. Usually, kitchens are private but in that place, the palace, okay, the kitchen is not private. The kitchen is actually to welcome everybody who's passing by. There's a food which is ready to do it. The whole, okay, which is the part which has been discovered in 1992 and 1994 by the American Center for Ant Research and Dr. Ghazi Biche. The whole, it is first of all like a panhole, and then the very big meeting area, which is they have the swastika, which is swastika in old time present of love, okay. And they have the bull present of the power, the fertilities, and the lion, the strength, and the lion. And they discovered like 30 centimeters of the trashes of the fire on the top of the mosaics. That's mean the ceiling's done with a lot of food, and it's a high ceiling, which shows that this person it's not a person, it's a VIP, welcoming everybody, is like important person, okay, but it's not the governor, okay, because there's a kitchen, okay, feeding people, welcoming people, and it's located on the entrance on the corridor. This is the most important place.
And from that large kitchen and these different antechambers, I mean, it seems like it was probably a very wealthy family that lived there.
Yeah,
What else
yeah.
can you sort of tell about the people who lived there?
See, this is happened at the end of the Byzantine, beginning of the Islamic period. Which is it's located in the certain area, which is the end of the Cardo and beside the churches. This is which is make it very, very important person. Who's living there? We cannot tell. But we know that this is a palace for a rich person. That he welcoming everybody because of the building and the whole. It's not the governor. It should be bigger house, only ruling area, and judging area. It's like the Hippolytus Hall. It's a hall for meeting, 100% for different. But this one have a kitchen, have toilets, there's a lot of things which has been destroyed in it.
Sorry about that.
I see you.
I've been trying to move around here to keep the lights on, but
I understand this. I understand this. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah. And now, so we've heard about sort of the living heritage of Madaba, people using the church, people building on old buildings, and sort of kids, running through the site.
What's happened in Madaba also, that the Christians, inside Madaba, they decided to sell some of the lands, because the lands, we got it for free, to be honest with you. And we start to sell and to sell and to sell and to sell. And because of the business, mainly the businesses it's happening in Amman. So we decided a lot of families to live inside Amman because they are in the actions, So what's happened is actually the Christians, they became minority, but this minority is the majority of Christians are settled inside Madaba, inside Jordan. But what make it unique, my city, make it very unique, is the tolerance between the Christians and the Muslims, That, like as we said previously, that we have the only mosque in all over the world called Jesus Christ Mosque, the only one. And in the Christmas time, in the Peace Court, we put the Christmas tree, and everybody come and celebrate, together. And because of the pandemics, this year didn't happen that much, but it's still the celebrations happen. And Ramadan, which is the 2 months ago, we don't cook, we don't eat in the streets. We respect the culture. This is what's happened. It's a very beautiful city. How the people living together and the tolerance between the Christians and the Muslims and the religions. We respect all the religions, respect everybody, and we look at the people as guests. We don't look at them actually as a tourist. This is which is make it much more different.
Yeah, this religious tolerance and acceptance and interfaith dialogue idea that you started to explore once we chatted to you in episode 2, that's been, such an enriching piece of these conversations that we've had since then. And you wouldn't have a sense of that religious tolerance if you were only looking at the model on the website, right? You need sort of this extra context, and it's really enriching. And I really hope people can go and visit Madaba in person.
Yeah, so you find the people, Yes. Before, it was actually, we're saying, well, we need the restaurants. Our houses are welcome, to people to enter in it. Why you need a hotels? Right now, we have plenty of restaurants, plenty of hotels, but even, it's not 100% the business, With Smile, you could find free food, free welcoming, free drinks. It's not the issue of business, the issue of welcoming people, because it's our culture, welcoming people.
Thank you, Sam. Now, I do want to move on to Fuad, and I want to hear a bit more about the Church of St. George. So now, Fuad, were you able to see that presentation that I showed at the top with comparing the Mosaic map with a modern map?
Yes, of course I did.
And what do you think of the side by side? This idea that early Christian pilgrims could have used the Mosaic map in a functional way to guide them around the Holy Land. That was something that I learned from listening to your tour. And
exactly, this is amazing, actually.
Yeah, so tell us a bit more about, I mean, do we know how Christians could have, or just religious pilgrims, in the 6th century might have used the Mosaic map?
Let me tell you something. It's indications. We didn't have anything that is really written to talk about the. We did have some written documents like the Algeria document but the logic that you can find in Madaba in a very small area with the number of churches, with the importance of them. And as Saber mentioned, when we have always been looking to the map in the church, let's say, but really analyzing it was because of, let's say, many of the machineries that came to Madaba. It took them some time, but until the year 1996, it was not really intensive, and the analysis was not really published, let's say, until Father Picarello decided to gather all these kind of researches that have been done on the map, and just publish them in a very scientific and systematic way. Until that date, really the map was a piece of art. After this date, it became a historical, biblical, archaeological map. So this is the difference between the two stages. Now, when you look at the map, regardless of the, let's say, the accurate dimensions, it's a very accurate map when it comes to and you can see that it is a map that is dedicated for, let's say, pointing a Christian important places, or places with some importance, or kind of an importance from the Bible. Okay, so either it's a church, or it's a memorial place for a saint, or one of the big church people, like the Lutz, St. Lutz church, or other kind of churches. Very important cities, like, so you saw the brief. It is the first detailed map for Jerusalem, with the details. And by the way, it is that much accurate. They decided the years that have when they have made this mosaic map from just analyzing the places of that have been there on the map. So they realized that there is a church that have been built, according to other historians and people that have made the history or wrote the history of this region. They have realized that there is one of the churches that have been made, or have been built, on the year 542. That's why 542 was a pinpoint.
Okay.
And they have realized that there is another church in a very important place in the year 562 to 570 that is missing from the map. That's why they have decided that this map have been built between these 2 years specifically. Okay, and
that's interesting. That's how
just to imagine how important this map is. It continued functioning until and it's very obvious on the map, until the iconoclasm period, because until the year until 700, I think 72, 775, or maybe earlier, 720s, the early 8th century, the iconoclasm started. So this map continued functioning until the iconoclasm, because you can see in the Dead Sea, when you look at the boat, you can see that the faces of the people is not there. And this happened specifically between the year 722 and the 840 something. So this map continued functioning until the 8th century and the 9th century.
Wow.
Now we have another important date in Madaba, which is the earthquake date. I think it's in the middle period of the 8th century, I think. Guys, you can help me, Usama and Usama. It's
749. 749. Before
So
they
until
wrote that 745, 747, but right now they were sure that 749.
Okay, I thought it was 770s or seven or something like this. Anyways, even if it's 49, until this date, and we're not really sure that the church was really demolished by the earthquake. By the way, we know that the community of Madaba continued after the earthquake, but we know that Madaba is one of the cities in Jordan that have faced plenty of earthquakes. That's why, as Osama and Saber mentioned, any renovation of Madaba, you might encounter some of the anything that is hidden under the ground. So it's common, at least in the middle place or in the middle of the city, where we have all have been living for the past 100 something years.
You know, in our modern times, it seems almost unbelievable, right? That you could have sort of a natural disaster and then lose track of something like this
Yes.
Mosaic map, this incredible piece of history that's and art it's so beautiful. And so you've talked about this person a few times, or a few of you have mentioned him, Father Picarello or Picarello. Could you
Yes.
tell us a bit more about him and the excavations
Yes.
that he helped with in the 80s?
Actually, it's not just Father Picarello. It's the Franciscan Church. They came. Their major let's say site is the Mount Nebo site. They've started there, but they have realized that they are encountering plenty of places of interest, and these places of interest have been tackled in a way or another by many of the missionaries and the people that have came to Jordan studying this, specifically studying the area of Jordan, the people and the community of Jordan, which by default includes this important sites. So they started doing it in a very scientific way. They starting by gathering all the information from all the churches and the other, let's say, missionaries or people who have came and started working on this issue with the cooperation of the Jordanian government and all the communities that is around. So when they worked in Mount Nebo, they worked with the community that is around Mount Nebo. When they worked in the center of Madaba, they worked with all the people surrounding the area. They worked with many funding funding parties from all over the world, and they started with Mount Nebo, and then they expanded their let's say scientific work, and they came up with let's say many of the studies that have documented all the Christian places in Madaba specifically. I don't know if they worked, Father Michel Picarello and the Franciscans, I don't know if they worked outside Madaba. They worked in a very, by the way, it's a very big area. It's starting from Mkawar, Macharius place or Macharius mountain, the Diban area, Madaba, until they reached Hisban. I'm not sure if they went out of Madaba, and they came up. By the way, I have the book. This is the book of Father Michel Picarello. It's just beside me. It's not just a book. It's a very important document for any of the Christian ruins and let's say archaeology, church, old church in Madaba. He made sure that he documents everything. And by the way, we are working, we have just because of the COVID, everybody's at house, everybody's home, everybody's working online. So we worked on something related to the pilgrims way in Jordan. And we have suggested, Sam did not finish the workshop. We have suggested that Madaba would be like a big guiding sign, even for the pilgrims that is going to come today. And not just the pilgrims, even the people who wants to walk for the adventure tours, for the valleys of Madaba, or the ways of Madaba, combining adventure with adventure experience with the pilgrim experience, or any kind of other cultural experience. So the first stop should be Madaba, where you can see all the area, and you can choose your track that you're going to walk on. Then next step is your track. So we're trying to revive the map, not just the map as a visit to go and see the map as a map. No, it's a guiding sign for everybody, even at this stage.
And I think that's just another example of Madaba as this sort of beacon of living heritage, from the olden times, from 542 or 562, guiding pilgrims then to the present day, and still is a tool of guiding pilgrims that people are still very connected to. So thank you, Fuad. I want to come to, last but not least, Saber. So you were talking about at the top, that it was sort of two distinct sites, Hippolytus Hall and the Church of the Virgin Mary, that were discovered, I think you said in 1905 for the Hippolytus Hall, and we'll get there one of these days. Sorry about that, guys. There we go. 1905 for Hippolytus Hall, and I think in the 1980s for the Church of the Virgin Mary. So tell us a bit more about these two distinct places.
So as I mentioned earlier, to the naked eye, the hall itself looks like one place, but in fact it was discovered at two different stages. Hippolytus Hall being discovered in 1905 by a Madaba local, and the Church of the Virgin Mary discovered by Father Michel Picarello in 1982. The theme of the Hippolytus Hall is that of the Greek myths. It just has, it's one of the ideas of the Hippolytus Hall is a beautiful depiction of the Greek myth of Hippolytus and Phaedra. And for those who are not familiar with the myth, very briefly, Phaedra is the stepmother of Hippolytus. She falls in love with him. She writes him a love letter. She has her nurse deliver the letter to Hippolytus. Hippolytus is very devoted to the Greek goddess of Artemis, who is the goddess of virginity, and he devoted himself to her, and he pledged a vow of chastity. So he rejected her. She rejected her. Story says she didn't take rejection very well. Very dramatic. Phaedra kills herself and write a suicide note. Well, a note saying that Hippolytus had killed her. Of course, word gets out to his father. He gets very angry at Hippolytus. He runs away. He takes shelter in a chariot with and the story says that Poseidon sent the sea monsters to startle the chariot, ordered by his father, and that's how he died. Now, that's briefly. I went on for a long time, but I could not have briefed it any more than this. In the hall itself, unfortunately, because of the earthquake, the part where Hippolytus is riding the chariot is missing. But the other, the rest of the story can be depicted as in the pictures seen in the hall. As for the Church of the Virgin Mary, it dates back to the 6th century, late 6th century, beginning of 7th century. It was restored during the Umayyad period. This is the first Muslim dynasty that ruled the area after the Byzantine period, and there was a great harmony between the Christians and the Muslims at that time, and nothing actually changed. They just allowed the continuance of the construction of churches. They helped restoring some of the churches that were damaged due to previous earthquakes. And the church itself was built, as I mentioned, on top of a Roman temple, and it has inscriptions, as in each basilica-style church that dates back to 6th, 7th century. They all have inscriptions that are dedicated to the bishop of that area or the priest of that church, and just to remind the worshipers of who this church was built under and what it represents. That's very briefly about the two places I'm.
Well, but what makes the Hippolytus Hall, to start with that, so remarkable is that this narrative which you laid out is captured in the mosaic tiles. And I think it's sort of the entrance, or what is now sort of the entrance to the hall.
The idea is that people were using mosaics to tell their stories, right? So that's being one story is the Greek myth of Phaedra and Hippolytus. Another story is that there are hunting scenes around the hall showing people how they lived how went on by their daily lives with the hunting scenes, how they how they ate, how they spend their time, as well as you have the Greek goddess of Tyche, who is guarding over the city because her main function as a Greek goddess is the protector of the cities. So you have that with this with a crown on top of her head, watching over the city. You've got the three-seated queens also in the upper left corner of the hall, which represent at that time the three main cities of the area, and it shows that Madaba was just as important as Rome and Constantinople at that time as well. It was just of great strategic importance. So the idea of mosaics is that I want to tell you my story in a very beautiful way, and this is how I was able at the time to do it best, is by doing it through mosaics.
And then that tradition of storytelling through mosaic is then carried forward in the Church of the Virgin Mary. I think there's a Greek inscription in the center of the church.
There are two Greek inscriptions, and naturally Greek is the official language of the area at the time. So naturally oral inscriptions would be in ancient Greek. And there is one inscription that is 8 lines long. It is just under the step of the altar, and there is the main inscription in the middle of the medallion at the front of in the middle of the church. And those inscriptions, I think we've added the little translation of the inscriptions on the virtual tour that we performed. And yeah, it's very customary. It was very traditional that each church had at least one inscription or two, just to commemorate the church to the priest or the bishop, or to remind the worshipers of what this church is representing.
Mm-hmm. And that idea of storytelling that then we see in Hippolytus Hall and then the Church of the Virgin Mary is continued forward at the end of your tour when we visit the the Madaba Institute for Mosaic Art and Restoration. And I don't know, can you tell us a little bit more about that and sort of its work now preserving and continuing the tradition of mosaics?
I can. I actually went to that school. I graduated.
Oh!
On a little personal note, I graduated from the school. At the time, it was just a high school. It was not a restoration institute. It was just a high school. So, but nevertheless, I had the opportunity to do some restoration work on the Hippolytus Hall and the Church of the Virgin Mary as part of my graduation project from high school. So, on a very personal note, I'm very connected to that place. It opened in 1992. At the time, Her Majesty Queen Noor opened the school along with the Italian at the time it was representatives of the Italian embassy at the time that also opened the school, because it was funded mainly by the Italian government because of the connection of Mosaics to Italy as well. So its main work is the preservation of mosaics that we have right now, and to help the local community get involved with the reproduction of modern mosaics, because it's a lot of locals depend on the production of mosaics as their income. So a lot of them open workshops and they produce mosaics and they sell them to tourists. So that's a big part of the school opened, as well as to raise awareness about the importance of mosaic. Eventually, the school upgraded to an institute, and it's the only place that where you can get a diploma as a specialist of preserving mosaics and producing them as well.
It's so fitting the way that it fits in, at the end of your tour and as a part of the larger framework of protecting cultural heritage and protecting it through not only conservation and restoration, but also, selling contemporary mosaics, continuing these traditions of storytelling and craft. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it really was the most beautiful ending to the tour, because I got to kind of reconnect with my high school years and my high school moments, and just brought back beautiful memories and reminded me of the work I was fortunate to do on the Hippolytus Hall and the Church of the Virgin Mary as well.
Well, thank you, Saber. And now, Kacey, if you're able to turn your camera back on and unmute your microphone and join us again.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, welcome back.
Hi, Kacey.
In the last episode of Madaba Mondays, I asked the three folks from the American University of Madaba, who all worked on the photogrammetry, if they thought Madaba's heritage was under threat. And I'm wondering what you think of that. I mean, so clearly there's a need for example, the Madaba Institute of Mosaic Art and Restoration. Is that in response to a threat to cultural heritage in Madaba? I don't know who wants to kick us off.
You're asking Kacey.
Well, I mean, Kacey, if you want to tackle that question, or
you started welcoming Kacey, and you throw the question, so it's Kacey, I think.
Well, I'd like to let you guys start first. I've never actually been to Malta, so I'd love to hear what you think on that.
No, I'm just joking. It's a very hard question. Let me tell you something, Paul. It's if you don't take care of any heritage place, so I think by default it's at risk. Let's say it this way: cities is growing, people needs more accommodation, governments need to make more roads, so we need to and mind you also that until this day you still have many of the archaeological places is not really discovered 100% even in Madaba. So still you need some kind of investment, and you need some kind of protection from the let's say the NGOs or the non-governmental organizations, plus the government, plus the people of the local community. It is always needed, just to highlight it, and also to always have the proper funding for protecting and making it more advanced, more welcoming for people. And even if you're talking about marketing it and putting the place in the right space that is needed. So it's not a threat. If you say it by say, it's let's say just putting this place where it should be. If you talk about Madaba as a place, I don't think that it is taking the place that is related to it when you talk about the importance of Madaba. Osama and Saber have been talking about the history. if you talk about this little place that is called Madaba, you're talking about the Greeks, the Romans, the Byzantines, the Umayyad period, the Abbasid period, and you're talking about this kind of mix. The Saber was talking about a Greek myth that have been drawn on a mosaic map, or let's say built on a mosaic map in the 6th century or the 5th century, while the Byzantine period, and you're still talking about a Greek myth. You can see the mix of the cultures. Until that date, what we know, what we're sure of, that still Greek was the let's say the language of the papers of the official government language until that date, even at the beginning of the Umayyad period. So the mix of the cultures is something that we need to protect, definitely, and protecting it comes from this kind of projects that we're working on. That's why I had the pleasure working with you guys on this project, and will always.
Can I add something, Fuad?
Be interested, of course.
Okay.
Marhaba, Sam.
Well, yeah, how are you? Hi, everybody, again. Okay. So actually, I'll tell you from my personal experience, okay, what's happening here, okay. Hi. Okay. This is happening.
I can get the light back on.
First of all, I am the third guide in Madaba, okay, which is licensed guide. And what's happened is actually it's the culture, which is the heritage, which has happened, that people are coming interested, okay, in it because they found it like Fuad, like Saber, okay, they're becoming more interested, okay, in tourism because they found it that this is actually bringing good income for them, and actually tourism is happening because of they like to preserve their heritage and to know more about their heritage. So Fuad, Saber, more of my colleagues, more of my friends right now, more of my cousins actually are interested, okay, to becoming guides, to have a shop, because it's bringing very good income for them, okay, and this income is happening because of preserving the heritage. The government, since I was working in the Society for Preserving the Heritage, one of our goals is to make the people at least understand what is the benefits of tourism, benefits of what they can make money from it. So the Mosaic School, this is the idea. Right now in the books of the student books, they understand the value of the heritage, the value of the tourism, the value of the sites, okay? So they appreciate more. Before, when I start guiding, the people, they start to look at me down, okay? What he's doing? Okay, what he's doing, okay? But right now, everybody is interested to be a guide. Everybody is interested to be having a business in tourism because they like to keep the culture of the heritage, which is their own. They are started to know the value.
True.
Just to add one more thing, the idea of Madaba being now on the tourism map, I want to say that Madaba as a city is being neglected by many tour agencies that organize the tours, because we have no control where we take the tourists to. You know, we receive the itinerary and we have to stick by it. And Madaba is often treated as a transit stop where tourists just go and visit the map and get back on the bus and we just leave. They never get to experience Madaba as a city. And we've tried a lot to talk to people to make Madaba a main destination where people get to spend the whole day because there's so much to see. So that's one thing that we need to work on, the locals with the Ministry of Tourism, with the travel agencies that organize the tour, to have a stronger presence of Madaba on the itineraries. The other thing is the biggest threat for me is the lack of education, as Sam said. We're still very, very misinformed, or um, we're not fully educated on the importance of mosaics and the importance of archaeological sites yet. The curriculum in the schools does not really have a topic that is dedicated to the importance of archaeology and tourism in Jordan. And you think for a country who depends 18% on its you know, its main income, or 17%, what makes the what do you call it, the national
GDP.
capital, or the GDP?
GDP.
17% of Jordan's GDP, thank you, Fuad, is from tourism. You would think that you know, they will introduce something in the curriculum to help raise awareness about the importance of tourism and archaeology in Jordan. So I think that's the biggest threat. And aside from natural disasters, of course, that we have no control of, but we should worry about the things that we have control over, you know.
Thank you for that, Saber, because, you know, and like a lack of education, it's such, I think, an underrepresented or underestimated threat to cultural heritage. So then what do each of you see, and this will be the last question, what do each of you see as your roles in protecting and preserving Madaba's cultural heritage, whether it be through tourism, whether it be through education, Saber, whether it be through, you know, stopping kids from running through or taking that shortcut through the archaeological site? How can we, you know, make sure that Madaba's living heritage, you know, from the Greeks to the Romans to the Byzantines to the Umayyads to the present day, how can we save that for the future?
Education, education, education. This is the weapon of changing the future of the Middle East is education, exactly. Education, education.
Exactly. Actually, it's a shared responsibility. You cannot. It's not one single entity. You're talking about even you as a person, the government, also the local community, and the, let's say, the non-governmental organizations that is working. It's not just. Let's say it's not an option. You're not protecting tourism. You're protecting your heritage. So this is something. It's not optional even. And this comes exactly from what Osama have just said and Saber. It's from education. We have been living in Madaba. Exclude Osama because Sam have been working professionally in since the 90s. In tourism, we have all been around tourism and working in tourism since our all lives, but Osama was working professionally in this, and until the date he have worked in tourism, he didn't realize or know, I'm sure about this, how important St. George Church is or the map is. Nobody have just took the time to teach us more about this. Even the other mosaic maps, you know, Madaba is full of mosaic, let's say, mosaics all over it, many churches everywhere. I mean, the place I have studied in, my school, is surrounded with I think 3 or 4 churches. One of them is a cathedral. We used to play in the cathedral. We didn't know, and we didn't even knew it's a cathedral, and we just played. Also, do you know, we used to play with the mosaics in our hands.
The stones, yes.
Nobody have taught us. And where are you going today? We're going to the ruins. You know, it used to be a phrase. Ruins is the place that we go and play in. This is the problem. On the other hand, the mosaic map that is in the St. George Church, I have a photo since 1896. It's the same map from 1896 until this day. So it's a matter of education. If you tell the people, don't mess with this place, it's very important, they wouldn't do it. But if you ignore it, you leave it to the locals to do whatever they wanted to do. At the beginning of our session today, you were talking about how people with Sam, how people have came to Madaba and started to do their homes, right? Until this day, my grandfather's house have a Byzantine rock in front of the house that does have a cross on it, and I think he just liked the cross that is there. He didn't even realize that it's a Byzantine. Maybe it's a church, maybe it's a house. Definitely, it's beside the chair. And he took the rock and he put it just in front of the window. This is, and they used the rocks or the remaining of the rock. And by the way, it's not just in Madaba; it's in everywhere that people came to a place where it had ruins in it. So this is how people dealt with any new place. They use the rocks and they use what is there. But again, education is the key. Awareness is the key for you and me and everybody, just to preserve his heritage, his history, and know the importance of it. So if you know it's very important, you wouldn't do anything. Actually, if you know how important it is, you will deal with it in the proper way. So yes, education, and awareness.
Yeah, I think it might be like for a follow-up here, like these three sites that were selected, St. George Church and Hippolytus Hall and the Burnt Palace, they're all within the archaeological park, or they have some level of protection, whereas there's so much other heritage in everyone's backyard. It might be also interesting to like have another side-by-side tour of these places that maybe don't have the same level of protections as these sites, and it's just they're also equally, they're important and they have history, and I don't know, you could have academics talk about them, you could talk about local people, like there were memories of those places. I think, yeah, there's so much. It seems like I haven't been to Madaba, I haven't had the privilege of visiting there in person yet, but it seems like there's so much.
I have
everywhere.
an idea.
Yeah.
I have an idea for you, not just to do it just on Zoom. On Zoom is always Paul and Kacey. Just come and visit us. We'll make the proper tour for you. So we'll do it better in person.
Yeah.
I'd love to. Saber, would you like the last word?
Wow, that's a lot of pressure on me. I mentioned it before. I'm a big fan of introducing something in the school curriculum to that has something to do with archaeology and importance of preserving Madaba's mosaics. With a country obsessed with producing doctors and engineers, we have a shortage of archaeologists and historians. So I think, we need to change the culture that being an archaeologist is more than someone playing with stones or just digging dirt. It's a lot to do with preserving history and preserving archaeology. So I think we just need to change the mentality of the people. Until now, if you're not an engineer or a doctor or at least a lawyer, being the least of favorite of the three, you're not really considered to have gone to college. So that's something that we need to change, and True. To just introduce something in the curriculum to raise awareness and better educate the new generations to come.
Well, I think this education is a good place to leave it. That community archaeology, it involves all of you, it involves me, and it involves our audience, because that's really the goal of this show, is to educate more and more people about Madaba's rich cultural heritage, hopefully encourage visitors to Madaba to stay longer than just a transit point, as I think one of you called it, and really sort of develop this idea and this really robust network. So thank you.
The education. This is a word I copied from our lovely King Abdullah. He said that the weapon of changing the Middle East is education.
Well, thank you, Kacey, Sam, Fuad, and Saber. We'll be coming to you again in 2 weeks on August 23rd to bring you more about Madaba. If you want us to answer a question, please use the Google form linked in the description of this episode. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
See you again next time.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.